Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dialogue. I'm Taimur Shamil. Kashmiris around the world are today observing Black Day. This was the day when the Indian forces invaded Kashmir, and it's been 70 years now since Kashmiris have been fighting for their right to self-determination. Thousands of innocent children, women have been attacked and killed, men have been attacked and killed by the Indian forces, and this brutality continues to this day. Kashmiris have been fighting for their right, as I said earlier, for the last 70 years, and the protests continue till today. The Indian forces have been using pellet guns on innocent Kashmiris, on school children, on high school girls as well. Many people lost their lives. And what do Kashmiris want basically? They want their right to self-determination, for themselves to decide whether they want to be free, have an independent state, join Pakistan, or whatever the option that they have with the Kashmiris. Pakistan stands with the people of Kashmir. Pakistan stands for their right to self-determination, and this is Pakistan's stance. Today we are going to discuss about Kashmir and the Pakistan stance on Kashmir, and how should Kashmiris negotiate with India, because Indian atrocities continue. And this new government in India, not a new government, but this latest government in India, we see the government of BJP has taken this whole violence to a next level. Bharatiya Janata Party, backed by RSS and Shiv Sena, they have a mandate against Kashmiris, against minorities in India, against Muslims for that matter specifically, and they have shown their real face in India, in Kashmir specifically. United Nations came up with a report, an unprecedented report, which was published this year in June, baffled India basically, and India is baffled by the development that is happening on the Kashmir front. This report of the Indian atrocities by the United Nations has made India go on a back foot, and India a few months back rebuffed the report of United Nations. Does India deny United Nations report? This is the face that I was talking about, India's real face. We are going to discuss about this with our special guest in the studios. Our first guest is Brigadier retired Saleem, but he's a senior defense analyst and an expert on Kashmir affairs and also on Pakistan's foreign policy. Welcome to the show, Brigadier Saleem. Second guest is Mr. Altaf Wani. He is a renowned senior political leader of all parties Hurriyat Conference. Welcome to the show, Mr. Wani. Brigadier, but starting with Kashmir, what is happening in Kashmir today is Black Day. Kashmiris are observing Black Day, and it's been 70 years now since I said this earlier in my introduction as well. 70 years non-stop violence in Kashmir, but we see that the youth of Kashmir, the people of Kashmir, there is no dent in their resolve to fight for freedom and their right to self-determination. How do you see their resolve and their passion towards freedom?
I think no words can really describe what the Kashmiri determination is, what is their sense of sacrifice is. Only Kashmiris can talk about it, really. We can only feel their pain. And I'm constrained to say that not very many people in the world, and more so even in Pakistan, do not really realize the kind of worst human atrocities which are being committed in Kashmir. I was going to open source data that says that over since 90, you were talking about the 70 years, let's begin from there. It was Pandit Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, who after a brief encounter with the tribal of Pakistan and the people of Kashmir in 1948 December went to UNO, which was just about 2 years old. But then UN resolution was passed which called for giving the right of self-determination for the plebiscite, giving the right to the people to decide for themselves whether they want to go with India or Pakistan. And since then, 18 resolutions have been passed, but India has been paying no attention. He's been dodging the world, he's been dodging the UNO, and it's a stigma on the efficacy of the UN itself. It is a stigma on the efficacy of the UN Security Council itself. I think world conscience should be woken up, and that can only happen when the voice of the Kashmiri people who are cocooned in that valley of Kashmir, it is spread to the world. And how would that be spread? That is very important. Because if 100,000 people have sacrificed their lives since 90, There are more than 100,000 people who are maimed, who are seriously injured. There are thousands of children who have lost their eyesight to the pellet guns. There are more than 23,000 women who have been widowed. There are more than 7,000 custodial killings. So all these facts and figures are about human beings, not about something which is not alive. So we got to realize when these facts and figures are not waking up the conscience of the UNO or the international community, what are the causes? I would say that we have not been able to really show it to the world.
We'll discuss about this. How can we show this thing, the India's real face in Kashmir? How can we show this to the world, to the international community, to the big powers that are there in the world? Mr. Wani, talking about Kashmir and the Indian atrocities in Kashmir, how do you see the face of BJP, a political party, ruling political party, which is backed by RSS and Shiv Sena, and their approach towards the issue of Kashmir?
Yeah, if you go back to the history of Kashmir, 1947, the invasion of Indian troops to Kashmir, that also has its roots in the RSS and BJP. Even that BJP was not at that time, it was RSS, Bajrang Dal, but the roots are there. Those people were involved in that also. And now, when the BJP is in power in India, it has its own agenda of Akhand Bharat, United India, and they have their own motives, and to fulfill their motives, they want to conquer Kashmir, they want to change the demography in Kashmir, they want to even throw the Muslims out of India.
The Hindutva mindset.
And the Hindutva mindset which is happening in India, the atrocities they are committing on the Muslims in India, the lynchings they are taking place in India in the name of homecoming, the conversion of Muslims back to the Hinduism and all that, forced conversions, and of Christians and all that. So that's my stop that. Coming to the Kashmir, now we have seen the day the Modi-led government took office in India, they have increased or intensified their military repression against the people of Kashmir. And we have seen the Indian journalists now, the Indian Army Chief Bipin Rawat, when he came, he said that there are 200 odd militants and we are going to flush them out. But this, you see the resolve of people of Kashmir after 1 year, the same Bipin Rawat accepting the defeat. He said that we cannot defeat the people of Kashmir because it's the people of Kashmir who are fighting. We have to see some other solutions to this problem. So all these resources India has used so far, be it its military might, be it all its whatever bribe they could make collaborates in Kashmir and all that, that has not worked. The people in Kashmir, now you see the youth in Kashmir, it's very sad to glamorize the martyrdom of those youth, but our educated youth, PhD scholars, IT experts who could have contributed to life in a different way, but they are forced to lay their lives. Why? Because there is no space left by the Indians for a peaceful protest, their peaceful dissent, which is the right of the people of Kashmir. They can dissent. The rights have been given by the United Nations Security Council. It was India who went to the states. It's shame on India because they are the ones who went to the United Nations. It was not Pakistan. It was not the people of Kashmir. But now calling the Kashmir its integral part. If Kashmir was your integral part, then why you went to the UN? So this is the mindset of Indians. The Indians want to create more and more horror in Kashmir so that people of Kashmir can give up their self-determination. So, but at this point of time, the writing on the wall is very clear. People in Kashmir are not ready to give in. India will have come to on the table and will have to resolve the Kashmir issue, and the international community will have to listen to the people of Kashmir, which it has started listening.
When a brother of a person is killed, when his father is killed, when the women are disrespected, what options are there, Brigadier? But for any young man, any young woman for that matter in Kashmir, his killing, his martyrdom, the new vigor that we see in the Indian youth, in the Kashmiri youth, how do you see that, this indigenous movement that is there in Kashmir?
I think you are very rightly pointing out that the shahadat of Burhan Wani gave a new blood and a new zenith to the Kashmir freedom struggle. But you are right in when they are unarmed, they don't have any weapons, they are all unarmed. But I think on the positive side, youth of Kashmir, as Wani was also trying to highlight, they have realized the potential of unarmed protest, massive protest. And that is what at best they can do. No matter what Indian black propaganda say about all this, in order to undermine that, and that is well understood by the well-read and well-aware international community, that Indian black propaganda cannot mask the atrocities that they are unleashing there. Going back to the point that what is the ideology of Narendra Modi government, I think they had waited for a long time in order to implement their concept of Hindutva, what is in Western parlance we would call it Greater India. They want to claim perhaps tomorrow they would want to, after Kashmir, they would lay a claim on Pakistan territory and then the Afghanistan territory. And
by the way, they do.
Right?
Hindutva intellectuals
Right.
do.
So I heard Sushma Swaraj on many forums claiming that Pakistanis are our brothers. We have to embrace them and convert them back to Hinduism. They are part and parcel of us, you see. So that is the state of mind of the Hindutva followers, which are now given a political face, very forceful one by Narendra Modi, who was persona non grata for no grant of visa to visit America or the West
Just few years
till
back
the
before
recent
becoming the
past.
Prime Minister.
Right. So it's a shame. But unfortunately, the greater shame is that world memory is very short-lived, and that is why it makes it very imperative for us that we should continue to raise the cause of Kashmir purely on the humanitarian ground. We should highlight the sacrifices of the Kashmiri people very forcefully, more effectively, through all possible means, the diplomatic, political, all forums. And especially the UNO and the OIC forum must be used properly. I think there is a lot of need to put more life into it so that the world becomes more aware of what is happening in Kashmir.
This propaganda that you talked about, that the people of Kashmir are backed by, supported by Pakistan. This question, this very thing, I think is a great propaganda, and you would be, you're in a better position to answer this, that the movement in Kashmir is an indigenous movement, not just backed by Pakistan. We certainly support them. But this propaganda, how do you see it? Indian propaganda, that Pakistan is supporting somehow the Kashmiri movement.
Right, propaganda is again, you know, the roots are there in the Hindutva doctrine. Their Chankya, Kontharia doctrine is that you have to make not immediate neighbor as your friend, but the neighbor of your friend, you see, and tarnish the image of your immediate neighbor in order to make them part of your own country. And this is how Greater India dream will flourish in the region, and all the countries of the SAARC, they are seeing India as a shark, you know, going to eat them up. If our memory can be refreshed on what just happened in Sri Lanka. What was the Tamil Tigers getting the sport from? Right, it was a long war which the Sri Lankans won, and we provided all possible political diplomatic support to them, and that's why Sri Lankans are very thankful to us. I think your point that what should we do? What propaganda has to be countered by counter propaganda. But as for the supporting of Kashmiri, we should not shy, we should not feel shame on this, that we are supporting Kashmiris, because all we can do is the political support, the diplomatic support. We cannot go and fight inside movements without indigenous sentiments, without the right cause can flourish in any country. Now, India is one country with 28 states, and they're trying to make 29 states as Kashmir. Out of 28, there are 19 states where they are experiencing insurgencies. Out of 300 major and minor insurgencies, 30 insurgencies are very wide and big and very, very alive. So one of the impediments that India has is that even if they tomorrow agree to discuss Kashmir because of the Kashmiri freedom struggle, then they will also have to address other 19, right? So that is why India is very hesitant to find a political solution on that, because if they go into political solution, it would become very, very difficult for them to control the insurgency in other parts.
We'll continue our discussion on the unprecedented violence that is happening till today in Kashmir. Kashmiris around the world and the Pakistanis who support Kashmir and the cause of Kashmir are observing Black Day today. 27th of October is the Black Day that the Kashmiri people of Kashmir and people of Pakistan, they observe against the Indian atrocities in Kashmir. Today was the day 70 years back when India invaded Kashmir. We are going to continue our discussion on the Indian atrocities in Kashmir and the indigenous movement of resistance in Kashmir. After this break, stay with us. Welcome back. Kashmiris around the world are observing Black Day today against the Indian atrocities in Kashmir. Mr. Altaf, Wani talking about Kashmir, the Indian atrocities in Kashmir, the unprecedented violence that continues till day. Talking about the very idea of resistance. Indian authorities they don't want the world to know that this movement is an indigenous movement. And the propaganda is that they have been blaming it on Pakistan, that Pakistan somehow has been supporting and backing the Kashmiri people. Tell us about this indigenous movement, that this is a movement which is led by the senior people in Kashmir and the young people in Kashmir. How do you see it?
See, the movement is not just, we can say it's not 3 decades old or some 2 years or 4 years old. The movement is 70 years old. It has gone through different phases. It was a political movement, purely a political movement, purely a peaceful movement. And people of Kashmir resorted to all peaceful means until 1989. Until 1989, we resorted to all peaceful means. Even when it was asked that the ballot is a solution, so that was also given a chance at that time. But we have seen that the Indian mindset was that they were never on this spot, and they always brutalized the dissent. It's now, we see now there is media, there's now communication, fast communication coming from Indian occupied Kashmir to this part of the world, and you come to know the things. But I'll tell you, in 70s, our cream of the students who are in medical colleges, universities, when they at that time they started a resistance movement against India, and those people were enforcedly disappeared. And we don't know until now about them. They were killed in extrajudicial executions. They were tortured in prisons, and they became disabled for the life. So this has been the history. But now, from 1989 onwards, when we saw that all those means which were peaceful, we have exhausted those, then our generation, my generation at that time, decided that we will use now force against the Indians. So we took the arms, we waged a war against India. It was purely indigenous. You cannot see anybody else in that. But having said that, when the Indians blame Pakistan, for the sake of argument, to discredit this movement internationally, they always tried, after 9/11, they tried to associate this movement with the international pan-Islamic terrorism and all that. This has been their attitude to defame it. But when it comes to Kashmir, if you see, Pakistan is a party to the dispute. If I say Pakistan is extending moral, diplomatic support to the people of Kashmir, but Pakistan can legally give Kashmiris the concrete support. There are UN resolutions for that they can assist the people of Kashmir in an armed struggle also. There's a legal basis for that. That's not, the Indian blame doesn't work over there. Pakistan has a legal, but Pakistan is not doing that. Pakistan has been politically and morally is a diplomatic window for people of Kashmir. We can't go ever, because in Kashmir, they don't give the passports. All our leaders are caged. Everybody who can go out to persuade the world, they are not being allowed to travel. So it's only from here we go out, we tell the world the stories about Kashmir. And the Indian media, if you see at the prime time, they will always talk about blaming Pakistan and discrediting the people's struggle.
Well, that has a reason, because Indian media literally has become a media wing of BJP. And that is very evident looking at what they're discussing every day on prime time.
May I highlight the flip side of Indian propaganda? You know, sometimes we feel some kind of pressure in the face of very strong black Indian propaganda, but there is a catch in it. That is highly demoralizing for the 700,000 Indian troops in Kashmir. When India says that Pakistan is giving the physical support to the indigenous freedom struggle in Kashmir, Indians are undermining their own armed forces. They are undermining the means employed to defend the line of control, which is in any case is violable. But Indians, when they say that actually they are acknowledging that there is 700,000 armed forces. That means on 800-kilometer long line of control, on every yard they have 2 to 3 soldiers standing with guns in their hands. They have the most sophisticated barbed wire system. They have the most sophisticated advanced technology in case of radars and the UAVs bought from Israel. They have done that from America, from all Western countries. So they have the surveillance system there, they have the aerial cover there, they have the radar system there. So in that case, if anybody is crossing the line of control, they are doubting the integrity of their own commanders and their own troops, who in any case are sacrificing their life for their country. So we'll make sure the bastards sacrifice more lives for their own country.
This is an interesting point,
Right.
that Indian media indirectly is pressurizing the 700,000 troops, Indian troops in Kashmir.
So that is why they have the highest rate of suicide in Kashmir. The Indian armed forces are highly demoralized. There are mass protests in India by the relative, by the families of the troops who are deployed in Kashmir on rotation every year, every 2 years, and the families are weeping and crying in front of the Indian Parliament, and then they are picking up the dead bodies of their soldiers who are shooting each other or shooting themselves.
And how do you see this drama of surgical strikes?
Right.
Interestingly, because BJP, even I would say that BJP actually embarrassed Indian army by saying that they carried out a surgical strike inside Pakistan. What do you think about that, the surgical strike propaganda?
One such propaganda has already, through a military inquiry, one of the general along with a large number of officers have been court-martialed recently for lying because they stage managed something in Kashmir which was ultimately proved to be wrong, and they've all been court-martialed and imprisoned. So the present Army Chief of India and his undercommand should wait for their court-martial, because as long as they can, keep telling lies to their own people, you can fool some people all the time, but not all the people all the time.
But also that there are professional armies in the region and in the world. And all those armies, professional armies, know what surgical strike is, and if surgical strike can be carried out in Pakistan.
Right. They are making mockery of themselves by stating such things, because these are big things coming from very small mouths, and sometimes very small things coming from very big mouths. So I would have a lot of respect for the Indian Army Chief. He is head of a professional army, second largest army in the world. But what he is saying is of the level of a platoon or company commander. So he should feel ashamed what the heck he is talking about. He is confronted by very brave and resilient armed forces of Pakistan, and they know what we can do to them. And this telling lies would not make any difference. So this propaganda is actually counterproductive for the Indian Armed Forces.
And perhaps, but rightly said, but this propaganda is certainly going to perhaps give vote to BJP in the next coming election, because Indian elections are Pakistan-centric and Kashmir-centric. So anything that would be against Pakistan, Mr. Wani, or against Kashmir would give BJP more votes.
This is an unfortunate thing in India, and Indians must realize it, and international community must realize it, that the rise of Hindu fundamentalism in India on the elections are Pakistan-centric. They are on blaming Pakistan every day in and day out for merely to get into power. But the Indian public, I think now the realization in different states of India, there is a realization on that. The way the BJP is tackling their foreign policy, the BJP is tackling their internal policy, it will affect the basic basics of the Indian society, and Indian society will become more fragile. They will reap the seeds of what the BJP is seeding this time, what the RSS and their allies are seeding. They will have to reap the seeds of this, because India is not a small country. If the whole of the Indian, if this sovereignism gets rise, because now till date the international community says, oh, it is inside India, but definitely it will go outside India. If this radicalization of Indians is enhanced, it will go outside India, and the world will have to face the consequences of it. And even the minorities in India are facing it, but the world will face these consequences. Then I think if this realization is not in India, if it remains the same as it is this time, the BJP getting vote and coming into the power and doing all this, this will have the adverse results for India in future.
Right. And this report of United Nations Human Rights Commission on Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir, how do you see this? Because I think the case is prepared internationally against the Indian atrocities.
See,
and this is, by the way, an
report-
unprecedented report. And
Yeah,
India is
that
baffled
report-
by this
That
this
report
this
is an
development.
FIR. That report is an FIR against India and the international community. The Human Rights Commissioner at that time, as time and again in his speech, July 8, 2016, and anyone looking at those images cannot remain silent. And that report has at least given 15 such human rights violations which Indian Army has been committing in Kashmir, and has asked the United Nations Human Rights Council to establish a commission of inquiry for that. I will tell you one small thing about the Indian media's role in that. And during that report, we were in Geneva when this report came in, and a group of our delegates, they met the Human Rights Commissioner, thanked him for the report, and took a selfie with him. And that selfie went viral on Indian media, and Indian media started trumping on the media that, look, this report is, this has been written in a comfort zone, and these are the people who are responsible for this and that. And by that, the whole population of India came to know about this report, what this report actually is. So in any democracy, if such a report comes, they will at least regret for that. They will repeal all those draconian laws which are facilitating that human rights violations. They will make such legislations in order to make their human rights record good. But what we saw after that, India intensified its aggression in Kashmir. Even they made the Public Safety Act more heinous, and they also continued with the Armed Forces Special Power Act and other things. So they have no shame for it. But this report, as the new Human Rights Commissioner has said, that they will keep on reporting on Kashmir. Now this report is a UN document, and it will keep on haunting India, and India will have to be made accountable on this human rights record in Kashmir.
Right. Brigadier, but not talking about peace and stability in the region. Pakistan has been trying for peace and stability in the region, especially with India, Afghanistan as well. Talking about Kashmir and India, we wanted to talk with India because we think that we have embarked on a mega economic activity, China-Pakistan economic corridor, Pakistan embarked on an activity. And we think that by improving our relations with the neighbors, we can sort out all the outstanding issues with India. But they're not ready for talks with Pakistan. The violence continues in Kashmir. We have to stop this. What are the options for Pakistan now? How should we proceed with India and proceed with the issue of Kashmir?
I think the first short answer is that we should not seem to be begging for dialogue from India. Because in my view, when we do that, we maybe in the eyes of the international community, we get some pluses, but it is highly deplorable when India backs out on very untenable logic and reason that they create for not talking to Pakistan. So because they feel that Pakistan is embroiled in number of internal and external problems, they have very systematically in the last about 17, 18 years, ever since US is in Afghanistan, Pakistan has been subjected to 2-3 kind of strategies or 2-3 kind of policies. From the Eastern Front, India has very successfully employed strategy of, say, cold start strategy on Pakistan, and that means out of 7 command that the Indian armed forces have, 6 commands are deployed on Pakistani borders. and out of that 700,000 troops are in Kashmir. On the western side, Pakistan is subjected again in collaboration with Afghanistan, India, US and its allies, because India has now become new darling of the West. For obvious reasons, I don't have to state all those. But ASPAC strategy has been applied on Pakistan in order to make sure when things really go out of control in Afghanistan, the battlefield must shift to Pakistan. Partially it succeeded, but then armed forces of Pakistan very resiliently and very bravely defeated that. Now the third strategy that has been applied on Pakistan, call it fourth generation or fifth generation warfare, that is the black propaganda, massive international propaganda, putting it to use the international and the Indian media itself, making use of Indian diaspora spread all over the world because of the large population they have, and for the last 30 years they've been sending the diaspora all over the world. They have found spaces there, say in Great Britain or in Germany, France, everywhere, but more so in America. In both houses of the parliament, majority of the staffers who work for the senators and the members of the lower house, they're all Indians. Out of those staffers, 4 have already risen to the level of ambassador. 1 found place in UNO, just resigned from there. 1 is Under Secretary of State, Nisha, beside this wall. Now these are those youth who were sent to abroad in 90. Pakistani should learn a lesson from there. When you are talking about an energy corridor and all sort of thing, there has to be a knowledge corridor also. Right. When you start sending your youth abroad and make them find spaces in order to make your voice strong. And ultimately it makes your economy strong. So India has subjected Pakistan from all fronts. We are made to fight on internal front. Our part of our media was very well paid by the hostile forces.
So what is the way out now?
What is
How
on
should
record?
we proceed now?
Let me just say one thing. What is on record is Barack Obama, just before he walked out, he confessed that I have paid $50 million to Pakistani media in order to create favorable narratives of US and Pakistan. So that is 5th generation and the 4th generation warfare that we are confronted with. Now Kashmir is part and parcel of all those strategies, because when we are subjected to those, we are made to fight on many fronts in order to make sure that we forget about Kashmir. And we have to convince the world, come what you do, Pakistan and Pakistanis are not going to let go the Kashmiri and the Kashmiri people of Kashmir like that. Right. We will never forget their sacrifices. So UNO is number 1 option, OIC is number 2 option, and direct reaching out to all the friendly countries through our government, through our government machinery, there are foreign missions. We must raise the Kashmir cause more forcefully at all forums. We must make our media, the national media, which is almost 100 channels now, at least they should spare 1 hour in 24 hours for the cause of Kashmir. And they should not be looking for any funds to come. It is the moral duty and national duty to undertake that in order to make sure that the world conscience wakes up.
This very important point, Mr. Wani, that Brigadier Butt just raised up, that we should bring up the issue of Kashmir at different platforms. Now, India and Pakistan are both members of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Pakistan and China are working on this China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. We also want India to be a part of this mega economic activity. Hopefully, India will be a part of this activity. And if we want to see peace and stability in Asia, if China wants to see that, if Pakistan wants to see that, India might also want to see that, we have to resolve and solve this issue of Kashmir. Do you think that other powers in the region would also take interest in what is happening in Kashmir and raising up this issue at SCO? Because India somehow has been raising up this issue of terrorism at SCO, interestingly.
This is unfortunate that these forums, which are regional forums or other forums which are there, they have certain dynamics, and you have to be there to be on the one side.
You can't discuss the bilateral issues and all that, right?
Raise that has been there. And that's why we failed many times on these forums. We could not raise this issue in those forums. But one thing which we can do, which Pakistan can do, which we should do, the one thing is that it is not the one day that we make a Kashmir a day. It is a 24/7 job for the people of Pakistan, for the media of Pakistan, for the intellectuals of Pakistan, for the politicians of Pakistan, for decision makers of Pakistan to look into the things in Kashmir, what is happening in Kashmir, how these need to be countered, what India is doing, how can we counter that? We need to do it 24/7.
Sir, just adding to what you are saying, every Pakistani, I think, every Pakistani, regardless of caste, creed or anything, is concerned about Kashmir. Every Kashmiri as well. But it is for the policymakers.
That's true.
For the policymakers to actually patronize all that.
That's what I say. That's policymakers. It should not be a short-term policy. Always we have a short-term policy. Short-term policy makes always a short-term policy. You should have a long-term policy. We saw in 2016 when there was Burhan Wani's martyrdom. After that, the images came out. Then our Prime Minister then decided to send a parliamentary delegation to different countries. But from that on, that was one time. Thereafter, we did not see that. We did not see people doing that like that. It's not that we have left to the Foreign Office. Alone Foreign Office cannot do it. It's not the job of Foreign Office to do it because Foreign Office has its own limitation, own staff and to do that. So every institution, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting in Pakistan will have to take a role in it to create awareness about Kashmir inside Pakistan and outside Pakistan. Unless the Ministry of Information takes the role in it, that other institutions cannot do. That the Foreign Office, I know in different places what our ambassadors do, but that our public doesn't know, that the people of Kashmir doesn't know, that doesn't come to that. So we should, and what the Brigadier said, that what the Indians did, how they created spaces for their people in the decision-making circles in US, UK and other places, we have to do. We have to work on that. We will have to send our scholars to outside world to negotiate for Pakistan, to plead for Pakistan, to create spaces over there, and then if they are on the decision making, they can talk about Kashmir. I talk to you that these were people of Kashmir. When you see the things coming in Wall Street Journal, coming in New York Times and all that, these were the people of Kashmir, the young guys of Kashmir, the sons of the conflict, who did it and
writing in these newspapers. My last question, Brigadier, but about the policy making in Pakistan. Pakistan's policy, foreign policy with India, Kashmir is at the core. Talking about the committees which were there previously in Pakistan, Kashmir Committee and all that, how should we improve the performance of our committees on Kashmir, and how should we bring up this issue at the international platforms?
I think it's generally said in Pakistan, if you don't want to resolve any issue, make a committee on that. So that is a very bad thing to refer to, especially when the committee head was somebody who could hardly do anything about it. Everybody knows about it. So I hate to talk about the personality. I think the Kashmir cause has to be taken up by the Prime Minister of Pakistan, the Parliament of Pakistan and the Senate of Pakistan. Our youth has to play a lot of role at the level of colleges, schools and universities. Our think tanks have to play a very, very proactive role. We have to write more about, we have to speak more about the cause of Kashmir. It is because Kashmir cannot be relegated to some spurious touch and go kind of thing. It has to be very sustained campaign. Our sentiments are with the people, our all concerns, our all sympathies are with the people of Kashmir. And we should reassure them in order to sustain morally, stand with them that we are Pakistanis are with you, because any Kashmiri martyr who's laid to rest is wrapped in Pakistani flag. So that says all about their sentiment about Pakistan, and we have to convey the similar sentiments to the people of Kashmir. And it has to be a national cause, a national movement to address Kashmir issue. It is not restricted to any government or any person, and it must not be confined to any committee. I strongly resent that. It has to be a government effort. All government pillars have to move to do something about it.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Brigadier Saleem, but pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Altaf Hussain, Wani, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. The atrocities in Indian-occupied Kashmir continue till date. Innocent women have been killed, innocent children have been killed in this unprecedented violence that continues in Kashmir. Pakistan stands with the people of Kashmir, and Pakistan supports every effort that Kashmiris are doing for their self-determination, for their freedom. Kashmir is not an issue between Pakistan and India. It's basically an issue of human rights, human rights are violated every day in Kashmir. We hope that every individual, every human being who stands for human rights would heed actually to what Kashmiris are saying, actually focus on what the people of Kashmir are saying and listen to what innocent children and women of Kashmir are saying. Thank you for watching today's show. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz. Speaks volumes about Pakistan's approach towards peace and stability over there. We hope that peace prevails in the region. Thank you for watching today's program. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.
ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك.
To you, it's Amna Siddiqui from the studio, and you're watching PTV World. Let's have a look at the headlines. President Arif Alvi leaves for Turkey to attend inauguration ceremony of new international airport in Istanbul. President will also hold meeting with his Turkish counterpart.